Welcome to the Pub Sports Radio NBA Closing Time Show. It is Monday, December 28th. Ian Cameron, Conor, Max, Skee, Profit, ready to break down the Monday NBA card. It's a short slate. It's only 5 games. It's not normally going to be this way on a Monday, but the way they've scheduled it with New Year's Day later this week, they've made the Monday card a little bit lighter than it's normally going to be throughout the rest of the season. But nevertheless, we've got 5 games to break down. We'll start at the top of the card with the Memphis Grizzlies taking on the Brooklyn Nets. And we had Brooklyn obviously opening around a 7-point favorite here. And now we're seeing Pick'em and even Memphis -1 in some spots in this game. All, of course, a reaction to Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, both sitting tonight, not playing for the Brooklyn Nets. And essentially, you're going to have a Brooklyn Nets team, guys, that's kind of going to look like the team we saw last year, where I think Karis LeVert is going to be the guy you look to be that offensive spark plug, if you will, to lead the team in terms of shooting and scoring the basketball tonight with no KD, no Kyrie Irving. You're going to see this a lot with teams like Brooklyn with multiple superstars when they're playing on the second night of back-to-backs. You're going to have load management. That's just something you got to deal with now as an NBA bettor and handicapper. And that's what you're seeing with Durant and Irving resting tonight after they played last night in what was Brooklyn's first loss of the season last night for the Nets as they fell in defeat for the first time this year. Meanwhile, you got the Memphis Grizzlies on the other hand. And if you got in front of this news, guys, and bet Memphis at a better number, I applaud you. You might be on the right side here. But if you're late to the party and you're going to take Memphis now, I wouldn't do it, because we did see Brooklyn last year. You talk about a team that had good work ethic and showed the ability to still be competitive, play well without Kyrie and Kevin Durant. We saw it all the last year pretty much. And this Memphis team has been a bet against team flat out for me the last, the first game I actually took Memphis against San Antonio, and I didn't like what I saw from the Grizzlies whatsoever in that game. And I came back against them and took Atlanta against Memphis on Saturday. And I'm not liking what I'm seeing from the Grizzlies on the defensive end of the basketball court. It's not been very good for them. They've turned the ball over a lot on offense. So there's been issues here with this Memphis team. Like I said, if you got them early, I applaud you, but we have to evaluate what to do with this game now with where the current number is. And where the number is right now, believe it or not, I could only look to Brooklyn, believe it or not, even with the 2 guys, Kyrie and KD, sitting in this game. I'm just not a big fan of what I've seen so far out of the Memphis Grizzlies. Conor, we'll start with you on this one, Grizzlies and Nets. Anything for you?
Yeah, not a lot here with those guys sitting out. Yeah, the Nets lost last night, the back-to-back, and Spencer Dinwiddie, he's got that partial tear, his ACL.
ACL, yeah, exactly.
He's out.
Yep.
I still, like you talked about with the Nets, I'd still lean that way. I just don't like Memphis on the road. Their defense is really, really bad. I've never liked them on the road. We'll talk about a couple more teams later. The last few years, this is a tough one. One of these games that we talked about a little before we came on, just a layoff spot, just don't love it. Either way, don't have a feel. I'd lean a little bit, even with those guys out. Memphis gives up a ton of points. I'd lean a little bit on the over. It's dropped. I think we're at 223. Is that what you guys got?
It's been a huge drop in the total. Yeah, 225, I think, last I looked.
225. Okay.
9-point drop. No doubt about it, that total.
It's dropped, but I'd still look a little bit towards the over. Memphis, even with those guys out, not a lot of defense here, especially on the road. So I'd lean a little bit on the over. That'd be my only play here.
All right, a little lean on the over. Skee, what do you think of this one, Memphis, Brooklyn?
To back up what Conor said, Memphis, their last 12 games on the road, they've only covered 3. So they have not been good on the road. And I especially don't like them without Jaren Jackson Jr. I just think that they're going to struggle until they get him back. So I really don't want to bet the Memphis side anyway. Yes, if you bet them early, you got the best of the number, but I just really don't like this team, especially on the road, until they get JJJ back. And for the Nets, usually I would just run to the window and take the Nets, but it's kind of not the same team. They don't really have a point guard tonight. No Kyrie, no Spencer. KD's out, obviously. I mean, I know they have guys who can get a basket, but I think not having a point guard is a big deal. So I lean towards the Nets just because I don't really trust the Grizzlies on the road, like I said. And I lean towards less points. I agree with the line. But at some point, it gets to be too low. But the reason I still probably lean towards the under is just because the Nets don't have a point guard.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what the betting markets have definitely done, Skee. They've hit this under very, very hard in this game, all the way down. A significant move on the under here. We've got the Pistons and the 2-0. That's right, folks. The 2-0 Atlanta Hawks. How about that? 10-point home favorites now, Atlanta in this game, around 230 the total. And I like Atlanta. I've looked to back them. I'm still upset I didn't take them against the hapless Chicago Bulls in their opener, even with the injuries aside. But I made amends for that. Took Atlanta Saturday against Memphis. Trae Young's off to a great start. What's he averaging? 36 points per game in that category. The last couple of games, he's been outstanding shooting the basketball. Really looks like he's ready to cement another step forward in his career. I like the additions Atlanta made in the offseason. Looks like they're going to be getting their big man as well, Clint Capella, back in the lineup tonight, ready to make his debut for the season here for the Atlanta Hawks. So we'll have to see how that goes for them. Looks like Derrick Rose, Blake Griffin, not going to suit up tonight for the Detroit Pistons in this one tonight. And the Pistons just coming off a demoralizing heartbreaker of a loss for them against the Cleveland Cavaliers on Saturday night. Double overtime marathon, and the Pistons fall short in that one. We'll see if they can bounce back here. To me, I'm not looking to make a case to go against Atlanta, but my issue is, you had Atlanta 2-point favorites against Chicago. You had Atlanta 3-point underdog when they opened, and I think they got bet down a little bit close to pick 'em by the time that game tipped off against Memphis on Saturday. But now they're 10-point favorites. Are we really ready to get behind this Atlanta team so much that we're ready to lay 10 with them? I'm personally not ready to lay 10 with Atlanta here in this game. This is a game I would lean over the total with. You've got this Atlanta team, which is right now top 4 in offensive efficiency and points per possession on the season. Now, granted, small sample size, guys, only 2 games, but they've been extremely efficient with the basketball. I think they can score their share. Detroit hasn't been playing great defensively, so I guess I'd lean over the total. And I certainly would be Atlanta or pass for me. But let's see if Atlanta's ready to be double-digit chalk before I go out and bet them in this kind of point spread range. Skee, we'll start with you with this one, Detroit, Atlanta.
I want to try to mention a prop on every game. And I didn't really love one in the last game, but I agree with what Billy said here. He says LeVert props too low, and that's the player I think of when you hear KD and Kyrie out. That's who's going to pick up the slack.
Yeah,
and this game for Detroit and Atlanta, I agree. I never really want to bet an Atlanta game under the total. I don't think their defense is that great, but getting Capella back will help. And I'm looking at the other side. It's a lot of points gone from Griffin and Rose, and it was already a Detroit team that was struggling to score. So it's just a matter of what will the pace be. And I think Atlanta gets their points. If you're into team totals, I think they'll score all over Detroit. It's just if Detroit can keep up. Detroit's only covered 10 of their last 31 games as a dog. It's just I don't really want to lay double digits with the Hawks. The only way I can look, though, is the Hawks. And if I have to play it, I will play the over. The over for the Hawks at home has been money, 15-3, their last 18 at the house. So I like Hawks and over if I have to play this one. And if I'm looking at a prop, I think maybe Trae Young can get more than 3.5 rebounds. I think that's kind of priced a little low. A lot of the big men for Detroit are banged up. Griffin out. Okafor is banged up. So maybe Trae Young can help out on the boards tonight. And I think he averages about 4.5. So over 3.5 might be a good look.
Yeah, and I'm not scared of Mason Plumlee either. Don't get me wrong. Nice team guy. I get it. But had a nice little season with Denver last year. But yeah, I think there's going to be a little bit of a challenge in the low post and the interior. When you got to muscle up and battle on the glass, I think there could be some difficulties in that regard tonight for the Detroit Pistons. What do you think, Conor? Detroit, Atlanta?
I'm a lot with you guys. This is just 10 is just starting to reach there. Are the Hawks ready yet? I mean, the Pistons are bad with Rose out and Griffin. I like the over as well, but that the big thing is with those points missing. It's just, can they get there? Because I think the Hawks can get it. When I see 223 in a Hawks game, I want the over. But like Skee said, you got to look at everything, maybe pump the brakes a little bit with those guys being out, back to back. I lean the over, and I lean the Hawks as well. Just this year, early in the season, laying 10, I just don't love it. We'll look at another way. Yesterday was all those home dogs winning, not even covering, outright winning. This is not a situation where it's a home dog, but I'm just, this first few weeks, I got to watch it. Some teams haven't been the same. I think it's going to take time. We'll talk about like the Nuggets, some other teams. They just haven't looked what they did last year, and I think it's going to take a while, especially with this COVID, everything that's going on, the season starting kind of quick, I think, for them. As you see in hockey's waiting a little bit to get going, while the NBA came back a little quicker. So I lean the over here, and I lean the Hawks laying the 10.
The team total over on Atlanta makes sense because you don't want to be worried about, and that's the thing versus laying 10, because you don't want to be worried about what if Atlanta's up by 12 or 14 late, guys come off the court in the final few minutes and there's those garbage points for Detroit. Or there could be a situation where they get up comfortably early and then Detroit makes a run, they get lax on defense. And although I think they're improving and making strides at that end of the court, for Lloyd Pierce and company here with the Hawks. But nevertheless, I think this is definitely a team that can still go into lapses at that end of the court. Whereas if you focus on, we just think they can shoot well. They're off to a great start offensively, pick apart this Detroit team, which isn't playing much defense so far this season, really didn't play much defense last year either. If you focus on the team total and for Atlanta over, instead of having to worry about laying 10 and worry about what kind of defensive play you get from them, that might be the better and more safer route. If you like Atlanta here in this game. Next one up, we got Utah, Oklahoma City. We've got the Jazz taking money here. This opened 6.5 with the Jazz on the road as chalk. Now 8.5, 9 in a lot of spots. 218.5 the total, which has been bet down a little bit. A lot of these totals been bet down, so a lot of moves to the under across the NBA card here. Oklahoma City was involved in a wild one on the weekend against Charlotte. Remember, they had their first game postponed because of Houston's COVID-19 issues. They came back against Charlotte, really controlled the game and led wire to wire. Unfortunately, Mark Daigneault in his first head coaching, first game as an NBA head coach, you're taking over from, of course, Billy Donovan, who went to Chicago. The team just sort of, fell asleep at the wheel, but double-digit lead with only a few minutes left. They let it completely evaporate, and they needed to get bailed out with a late shot to win the game from this Oklahoma City Thunder team to just hang on against Charlotte in that one. But nevertheless, they got the win. I'll give them credit for it. I still don't think this is a very good roster on paper. I think it's my Hamilton boy here, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and not a whole lot else on the Thunder, especially from a scoring standpoint. I look at their big men. They lost Steven Adams, of course, who's no longer with this Thunder team. That makes me think Rudy Gobert is just going to feast tonight. Won't he? He should. In this game, shouldn't he? I mean, you talk about from a defense and physicality standpoint and rebounding the basketball, who's going to bang with this guy from a Thunder standpoint in that low post? I have no idea. So you talk about the Thunder maybe being up against it where they're going to give up those second and third chances. They're not going to be able to clean up the glass at either end, offensively or defensive rebounding tonight. Could be an issue for this Oklahoma City team. Yeah, they squeaked past Charlotte, but Charlotte's been sort of a team that's not been really shown me that they've got everything together right now in their first two games with the way things went for the Hornets. Remember, they had a terrible performance against Cleveland in their opener. This is a huge step up in class for Oklahoma City, and I'm not ready to trust them to be ready for it. So I understand why the betting markets have pushed this number up a little bit on Utah. You can't say anything about other than wow for the way Utah played against Portland. In their first game. They were absolutely outstanding. Quinn Snyder's been preaching, we've got to get back to our defensive principles, our defensive ways, which kind of got away from us last year a little bit. We tried to play faster. We tried to be a little bit more offensive minded, and it came at the expense of a defense that 2 years ago was a pretty damn good NBA defense, and last year it wasn't as good. I think they want to get back to that kind of basketball this year. So the money's come in on Utah. I wouldn't lay it at this number, but I kind of see what people are thinking, betting Utah here. Same with the under here in this game. I think the Thunder outside of SGA, I mean, where are the options offensively for this team? I'm not so sure. And I think they're going to be a little bit manhandled in the paint tonight by this Utah team, specifically Gobert. So lean Utah, lean under the total. I do agree with where the side and the total have gone in this game overall. Connor, what's your take here? Utah, OKC.
I'm with you. This Oklahoma City team, I don't think will be – their roster's not very good. Like you said, the depth, the big guys, they just don't have it. I think Gobert can do what he wants. But this isn't a game I'm rushing to bet Utah. I just never have liked them. I know we got the no fans. I never liked them. It's not 10, but I just don't love laying points with the Jazz here. If I had to go here, I'd go with Oklahoma City and the points. I think they could stay in this game. But this is a tough one. This game was difficult because just the Jazz, something with them laying numbers on the road. I just don't like it. I see them. They could easily win by 10, especially early in the year. Teams are feeling it out. And Utah is one of those teams that very streaky and can hit the three. They got shooters, and can be hot and cold. And when they're hot, they're really well. So they could cover this, but I just don't love it. It was a pass for me. But if I had a free bet, I'd take the 9 with OKC here.
All right, so small lean if you had to OKC plus the 9. Really, to me, the concern is going to be Horford and Muscala, the 5 spot for OKC. That's trouble against Gobert tonight. It really is. I mean, Horford's a finesse big man. Let's be honest. He's one of those guys that's pop-up shooter. He's not necessarily going to be a guy that's going to crash the boards and do it all that successfully. And you got to deal with Gobert. I think that's a problem tonight for the Thunder. And Steven Adams was the guy that gave them that last year. Of course, now he's no longer there. Skee, what's your thoughts here? Jazz Thunder.
Yeah, I agree with Conor that I'm not running to the window to back the Jazz to win by double digits. I just don't think that's a great idea. I don't think that they're playing at the level I want them to be playing at to do that. Although I do agree with you, Ian, that this OKC team is Gilgeous Alexander and kind of nobody else. I don't want to disrespect Horford and a couple of guys, but I mean, it's just not a great unit. And they're too small. You already said it. Rudy Gobert is going to feast. This is my favorite look on this game. It's not a point spread. It's not a total. It's to play on Rudy Gobert to have a big day versus OKC. They don't really have anybody behind Horford. Muscala, he's small. At the power forward spot, they're all small. And he's averaging 17 rebounds per game. And his rebound prop is 12.5. It's a little bit juiced now, but I think he definitely gets over 12.5. So that's the way I'm looking at this game.
There you go. Sometimes the props are the best way to go with these games when you're undecided and unsure about a sign. So especially when there's an angle you can exploit and a matchup advantage you find. And that one makes a whole bunch of sense to me. Gobert over points, those two in particular, points and or rebounds or both. You can combine them. I think he's probably going to score a lot inside, probably going to rebound the basketball a lot inside as well tonight against Oklahoma City. You could definitely see that one coming in. We've got Houston and Denver now. Next game on the slate, we've got the Denver Nuggets here, around a 6.5 point home favorite. Some money's come in on Houston here, total 222 in this game. This is another one where I give James Harden credit because really it was him carrying the Rockets to a potential victory against Portland the other night, although they fell just short. It's almost like he's just trying to just show people, here's what I can do for you. I'm going to just act reckless. I'm going to sabotage the team to begin the season. We're going to have a bunch of guys out due to COVID. I'm going to have to play through it. I'm going to have to carry the team, and I'm going to show everybody what can be done when James Harden's on your basketball team. It's almost like that was his whole major plan from the onset. But nevertheless, Harden did everything he could, but fell just short against Portland. But they did cover the number, getting a significant amount of points on Saturday against the Portland Trail Blazers. Now can they follow that up? Because here they are, they're playing now in high altitude, thin air of Denver, 48 hours later, a lot of minutes, a lot of wear and tear on James Harden, having to do what he needed to do to give his team a chance on Saturday. Question is, can you trust a Denver team that's gotten off to a slow start, 0-2, losing to Sacramento in overtime, losing predictably, in my opinion, to the Clippers on Friday? You knew the Clippers would be just, out for blood in that game Friday night against the Nuggets, and the Clippers played that way against Denver. But it's been a tough start. I personally am starting to see signs of maybe this Denver team not being quite as good as they were last year. We'll have to wait and see. They lost some key players from last year when you think about it. Jeremy Grant was a big loss for this team. That's significant. Torrey Craig is no longer with that group as well. That's a concern. Paul Millsap, I don't know how much is left in his gas tank. Michael Porter is going to have to be strong for them. Monte Morris is a nice little guard as well for this team. But to me, it's the supporting cast and surrounding members around Murray and Jokic. So far, I've not been impressed with what I've seen in that regard from the Denver Nuggets. So I think from a spot perspective, it's a good spot for Denver. They're 0-2. You've already got Michael Malone trying to you shake the cobwebs out of this team after and sort of giving them the riot act, reading them the riot act for the game against the Clippers the other night. I'd expect their best effort. Question is their best effort going to be enough to cover 6.5 points here in this game? I would lean Denver because I could see Houston. Remember, Houston is still incredibly shorthanded going into this game, and they just battled their guts out the other night against Portland with that shorthanded group. Let's not forget, no John Wall, no Ben McLemore, no Aaron Gordon, and no DeMarcus Cousins. It's a very short-handed team. And out around James Harden right now, here's what you've got. You got Daniel House, PJ Tucker, Jayshawn Tate, and Christian Wood. And Christian Wood actually had a really good game against Portland. Do I trust Christian Wood to play good again tonight for Houston? Hell no. No, I do not. So for me, it's a lean to Denver here, especially with the number trickling down a bit. But I don't know if I have the stones to pull the trigger laying 6.5 with this team with how off kilter they've looked in their 0-2 start. But definitely I would prefer Denver as opposed to Houston in this game. Skee, we'll start with you here. Rockets and Nuggets, fascinating one.
Yeah, I'm looking at the line, just thinking how low can you go? Because I want to be interested in Denver. I just think that the line that I want would probably be under 5 for sure. And it's kind of hard at 6.5. But the Rockets, they just played a game more recently, and they're still missing a lot of pieces. The Nuggets, they've been waiting since that beatdown on Christmas. And they do have a home court advantage even without the fans. They have altitude. So they've already lost 2 games. They've had rest and time to correct whatever they need to correct. I think that Jokic can take advantage of Wood and whoever else, and I think that Denver bounces back. So I would look towards Denver, and if I'm playing the total, I would look towards less points simply because I just think Harden, if he has the ball, is going to be taking away a lot of the clock. And for the Denver side, I think they'll work more towards Jokic, and I think that will take up some of the clock as well. So I look towards Nuggets and the under. And if I'm looking towards a prop, it will be Michael Porter Jr. He's been grabbing some rebounds, and it's not that many people on the Houston side that I'm scared of to be taking the rebounds from him. So I would look towards him for rebounds and points. I'm obviously looking towards Joker.
All right, there we go. There's some props as well. Michael Porter and Joker from a prop standpoint, and he leads Denver and under in this one. C-Mac, what's your take here? Rockets, Nuggets.
Yeah, what Skee said with how Houston's undersized, I think those are solid props.
Yep.
Rebound with Porter and Jokic. Look for that. Yeah, the Nuggets here. I mean, I don't know if they just losing Grant. I think was pretty big. I think he was their third guy. I think they were hoping Porter becomes that, but they saw that only in flashes, especially in the bubble towards the end. He's definitely got the talent, so we'll see. Skee nailed it. I wanted this 4 or under to pull the trigger here. I lean the Nuggets. They're at altitude. They should get better. Malone, like you said, read him the riot act. These first 2 games defensively, this hasn't been the Nuggets. Last year they played defensive pretty well, especially at home. I mean, you see them dropping 3 straight to start the season at home would be rough. I think it's a bounce back. I'm with you guys. It's a lean. I might bet this game. I'm not sure. And looking on the total, I'm kind of with Skee. The missing points and Harden holding the ball, shooting it, this could go under. I just don't have a great feel right now with the players out and how the Nuggets. I'm going to pass on the total. Just what's going on early in the year, because it's a pretty low line for a Rockets game, but missing all those points and all those players. Just lean the Nuggets and nothing on the total.
Something that there is a bet I am going to make on this game. I told you how I leaned to Denver at -6.5. I'm going to take Denver in the first quarter in this game against Houston, and for this reason, this is a great Mike Malone quote after the loss to the Clippers on Friday. We're 0-2. We want to hopefully find a way against Houston to come out from the get-go and sustain it. That was my message to our group. You can't win in this league playing 3 quarters. So what's that tell you? You got to start better. You got to start faster. And Jamal Murray started slow against the Clippers too. He shot the ball terribly in the first half against the Clippers. Then he finally started to find it a little bit in the second half when the Nuggets tried to make a run. Hopefully he starts that way tonight against the Rockets.
I can agree with the look just because of the quote, but I'm just thinking it back to, as far as I can remember, this Denver team has not been a good first quarter team. Not even just this past year, but going back to the year when they played Portland in the playoffs, every first quarter was just They didn't wake up until the second quarter, so it's been a long-term issue for them.
That's 100% true, and that's the thought I had in the back of my mind while I was just recycling this game in my mind here and just trying to figure out what's the best way to go with Denver. Yeah, you worry that if this continues again, they're not going to see the best of the Denver Nuggets till the second, third, fourth quarter, which has often happened with them. We saw it against the Clippers Friday night. They actually made a really good run at the Clippers late third quarter into the fourth quarter. But by then they were already too far behind, because of just how poor they were in the first couple quarters on Friday night. So again, they can't dig themselves these early holes. But as Skee mentioned, it's just been a recurring theme. It's become a pattern. It's become part of their DNA, so to speak. And it's hard to reverse course when you've just become a team that has just consistently performed that way early in basketball games.
I'll say one more thing, Ian. I know you're looking towards the Nuggets early. I'll say even on some of those games where I've seen them not show up in the first quarter, they still show up and cover the first half.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that 3.5.
You bet it after the first. If you lose your first quarter bet, they're down after the first quarter. They don't cover that bet. Maybe then a live in-game bet at that point and see if it turns a little bit. Because you got to believe, too, as the longer this game goes, you're going to see it show up a little bit for Houston. They're extremely shorthanded now. They're playing their second game in 3 nights in the altitude. Harden played just a boatload of minutes the other night against Portland. That's going to show up physically. Now, it's early in the season. I get it. The condensed games in a short period of time shouldn't be this difficult compared to, say, doing this in March, April, later in the season. But you're still going to feel it a little bit, I think, if you're Houston, the wear and tear a little bit the later this game goes. We've got the Lakers. We got a really good one here to wrap up the Monday card. Lakers and Portland Trail Blazers here. We've got the Lakers currently around 3.5, 4-point home favorites, 226.5 the total in this game. Can't say it's been a great start to the season for Portland. They got bombed by Utah, and then they escaped by the skin of their teeth, essentially, against the shorthanded Houston Rockets the other night. So, very, very unimpressive 1-1. We'll have to wait and see how they fare here. Anthony Davis looks like he's going to be back tonight for the LA Lakers. Remember, didn't play last night against Minnesota. Not that they needed him. They absolutely laid waste to the Minnesota Timberwolves last night, the Lakers. Bouncing back with 2 pretty good games against Dallas and Minnesota after losing the opener against the LA Clippers. So about good bounce back in the last couple games. LeBron James, I'm thinking he's not playing. There's a questionable game time decision floating out there about LeBron, but now he's, aggravated some kind of ankle injury now in 2 of the last 3 games. And it happened again last night against Minnesota. And it's just so damn early in the season where I think Frank Vogel's more than likely just going to say, you know what, give the guy a rest maybe potentially tonight because it's been that same ankle now. They've aggravated multiple games early here in the season. So it wouldn't shock me to see LeBron sit, especially with them getting AD back. And of course, for AD, with him back on the floor, that means better be ready in that low post area if you're Enes Kanter and Yusuf Nurkic tonight of the Portland Trail Blazers, getting ready to handle him. For what it's worth, and, it can't be the only part of your handicap, but these playoff revenge situations have actually worked out pretty well so far. You look at Friday night, LA Clippers beating Denver, avenging that playoff loss, and then the Clippers on the other side of that yesterday against the Dallas Mavericks. As Dallas just unbelievable. What were they up 50 points at halftime, and they just put the absolute boots to the Clippers. Now, no Kawhi Leonard. You have to factor that in as well for the Clippers in that game to Dallas, but that's no excuse. That was just a domination start to finish by the Dallas Mavericks. So those playoff avenging teams have gotten off to a good start. And of course, we've got that in play here tonight with Portland after they got bounced by the Lakers in the first round in the Orlando bubble last year. So really, really good matchup. I lean a little bit to these Blazers catching the points, but it's still the same thing, kind of what we saw last year in the first round. It's nice that, I think they'll be fired up big time. And I know it wasn't pretty beating Houston. They'll be ready to play here tonight. But the fact remains, there's still some matchup issues this Blazers team has with the Lakers. It concerns me enough where it's a small bet for me only on Portland. It's nothing that I would consider strong. We'll have to wait and see how it goes here. But I definitely am impressed with the way McCollum has shot the ball so far this season. I would expect him, absolutely outstanding he was the other night, just surviving that Houston game. But I would lean a little to Portland, not a strong or best bet material or anything, but Blazers in that playoff avenging role, which is been a good one for teams early so far this season. Conor, what's your take here? Portland Lakers, the nightcap.
Yeah, this one's kind of tricky. Lakers on the back-to-back. I guess there's news. Yeah, Davis is going to play. It's just his calves, minor.
No.
In this game, I like the over here, 226. I think, like you said, Portland comes out fired up after that whole playoff thing. I'm a little bit worried, as you know, with the Lakers, with Gasol and Harrell losing defensively, Howard and McGee. They were so great at blocking shots and down low rebounding. Losing that, I think the defense is a little. I mean, they still have AD and he's unreal, and LeBron. Don't get me wrong. Defensively, those guys are great, especially when they want to turn it on. But I'm looking at this. I think it goes over. I think points will be scored, and I think it could be close. You know, the Lakers can go through the motion and win when they want and how they want. But Dame's gone off against them. You know, I remember last year he had a huge game in LA. I think they'll be fired up, and I'm not going to take the 3.5, even though I kind of like it, but I like the over here in this game. I think we can get over the 226.
All right, a little lean to the over. Alex Caruso, by the way, for the Lakers is also looks like a game-time decision as well for this game. There's things to like. Dennis Schroeder's played well for the Lakers. Marc Gasol, actually,
I like that.
Really good night for him last night against Minnesota. We were worried about his offensive game down the stretch of his tenure in Toronto with the Raptors last year. It just disappeared. Like, he wasn't making shots. He was missing layups. He was missing shots he'd make in his sleep and in the prime of his career. So anything they get offensively, the Lakers, out of Marc Gasol this season is going to be a bonus, because he can still give you the defensive presence, the interior rebounding, all that stuff. Can he give you something offensively? Because that just evaporated from his game late last year. And it's been nice to see that a little bit, at least last night, from Marc Gasol for this Lakers team. Skee, what do you think of your Lakers tonight against this Portland team?
For what it's worth, I don't think LeBron will play, but hey, maybe he does. Yeah. But assuming he doesn't play, I don't think the Lakers. I think the Lakers still can win the game. I mean, I think the line will go a little bit lower, but I'm not going to run to the window and do that. I agree with Conor that I like points in this game. I think the Lakers are an over team this year anyway. I would love the over if LeBron is there for sure, but I think, like you said. Well, Portland doesn't play a whole lot of defense. I know they tried to fix it with Covington, but they're just not playing a lot of defense, and they can score with the best. So they went over 13-4-1 their last 18 away games. I like the over, and I didn't really like a prop in this one, so I'll stick with that.
Yeah, definitely liking some points to be scored, Skee, with the Blazers and the Lakers. All right, we'll get to best bets. I got to put quotation marks around best bets for this particular show, because I don't think any of the three of us are overly strong on one particular play on this card tonight, but we'll give you something at least on the way out in terms of best bets. Before we do, looking ahead briefly, just any initial leans, things you might be looking to bet in terms of the Tuesday card, since we don't have an NBA show tomorrow. We got some interesting games here. We've got the Raptors and the Sixers, the winless Toronto Raptors, a little bit of a tough start for them. Boston losing at the buzzer against Indiana last night. They'll have a chance to make for redemption tomorrow night. They play Indiana once again in that game. I'm certainly interested in Boston in that game now. 2 straight losses, playing the same team that beat you last night. You would expect focus from Boston there. We've got the hapless Chicago Bulls playing, the winless Washington Wizards. So someone is going to win their first game tomorrow night in that one. Pelicans and Suns, that's one of the games tomorrow that's kind of interesting to me. I really like what I'm seeing out of Phoenix so far this season. We knew they'd be improved. I've liked what I've seen. They just took apart, dismantled Sacramento last night, ran away and hid from the Kings in the second half of that game last night. What else have we got? We've got, and here's obviously maybe the game of the night, another one of these playoff revenge situations, Milwaukee and Miami. See, the one side of me is going to say situationally, you've got the Bucks now getting truly embarrassed by the New York Knicks last night. We know how good the Bucks are off a straight-up loss. Their ATS record has been outstanding. We know they're fired up to play Miami because they knocked them out in the second round. But the other half of me, and I think Skee might agree, because we were talking about this all the time last year when Milwaukee played Miami. Is it really that good of a matchup for Milwaukee playing that Miami team? Miami it was just not a very good matchup for the Bucks whenever they played the Miami Heat. So matchup wise, it's like, are things really going to change that much? But the other side of it, the intangible side of it says, well, this is going to be a game that if Milwaukee's going to treat one singular regular season game as if their life depended on it, it's going to be tomorrow night against the Miami Heat. So it's a fascinating one. Again, like I said, these teams trying to avenge a playoff defeat have gotten off to a good start. We'll see how Portland does tonight against the Lakers in that spot. We'll obviously have to see how Milwaukee does tomorrow night against Miami in this spot. But the matchup says Miami is still it's just a tricky matchup for the Bucks. But the other side of me says you're more than likely going to get Milwaukee's A game tomorrow night against Miami, trying to beat the Heat. And obviously after pretty much a dismal effort against the Knicks last night in New York. Skee, we'll start with you. Just initial thoughts on anything from the card on Tuesday.
I'll just go down. Chicago and Washington just doesn't sound like a whole lot of defense in that game. Golden State and Detroit. I don't really want to back Detroit versus anybody the way they're looking, but at the same time, Golden State laying points, no Draymond. I don't want to do it again.
Golden State life and death in Chicago last night is not exactly a vote of confidence.
Yeah, I don't want to do it again. So I'm not too sure about that one. Philly and Indiana and Boston, I don't really have a feel for it. Maybe I would think Boston wants to get a win after the last game where they lost versus Indiana. The only other games the Milwaukee game, I think if you like Milwaukee, you get in now because Jimmy Butler's doubtful. So once they announce he's out, the line will go up some. The Nuggets play again tomorrow. I think that it's a spot that the Nuggets are in today. They lost by double digits in their last game. I think the Nuggets win here today, and I think maybe the Kings can pull one out against them tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad way to go. Sacramento has been they've played better than I thought they would. I mean, let's not forget they beat Phoenix the first time they played the Suns. And then, of course, last night, the Suns got the redemption and beat them up pretty good in the second half. But, I like what I've seen from Sacramento. And you're seeing what Sacramento can be like now. Can this guy stay on the court? If he does, he's turning into one hell of a basketball player for them, De'Aaron Fox. He's been obviously, we know the guys can be a really, really good point guard in this league if he can stay on the floor. But I think Marvin Bagley, I've been impressed with what I've seen out of him so far. We know Buddy Hield gives them another shooting presence. I think as the season goes on, you're going to see good things from Ty Halliburton, the guy they drafted out of Iowa State. There's some pieces in place here with Sacramento Skee that I think are going to lead this team maybe to being as long as I've said often. Luke Walton can just, let the players play. Don't do anything silly from an X's and O's and coaching standpoint. But Sacramento has some pieces. I agree.
Yeah, I think they pull it off. That's my only looks. I don't know if Conor, you like any of those?
Yeah, anything for you right now on the Tuesday card? Just initial leans. We've obviously got to see who's in, see who's out. We've got, until tomorrow with these games tipping off. But just your initial things that you might be looking to bet.
I'm with you, Ian. I just like the back-to-back. They lost by a bucket. I mean, right now it's early. It's just 1.5. I'd go with the Celtics, even if they're laying one. I think it's going to be right around there. They're getting one. I'm with the Heat. Well, Skee mentioned it's all about Butler. We'll see. But I get the revenge with the Bucks, and they're so good regular season. But right now with the Heat, we're at home, and they could catch 4.5, 5. I'd go with the Heat. I also like the Clippers to bounce back. I think, at 8, I think they could cover there pretty easy tomorrow against Minnesota. And we'll see in Minnesota. I haven't seen them enough. I watched the game the other night, how they are. They got, beat up last night by the Lakers. I like to see that. But I think the Clippers bounce back and get a double-digit win. And then I'm with you with Skee, how Denver wins tonight, especially if they win big. I think they could be a 4.5-point favorite. Maybe 3.5 in Sacramento. I like catching points with the Kings there.
Yeah, that Clippers spot makes sense too. Obviously, we'll have to see if Kawhi's back, who's in exactly. But certainly an embarrassment like they had yesterday against Dallas and Minnesota. They were bombed by the Lakers last night. the Detroit game, don't be fooled by the final score. Okay, Detroit, I think, led more of that game than Minnesota did. Minnesota just came on strong in the fourth quarter, and Detroit kind of crumbled in that first game they played against the Pistons. So I don't think it's been a very good start for this Timberwolves group. They could be, you could be looking at them up against it tomorrow night against a PO'd LA Clipper team tomorrow night. That one makes some sense. And I mentioned liking Boston. I want to point out something. You're going to see teams play each other 2 games in a row because you saw it with Phoenix and Sacramento, right? They played each other 2 straight games in a row. Boston and Indiana now, same thing. They're playing each other 2 games in a row. A lot of people like to knee jerk to bet the team that lost the first game in the second game. I'm only going to look to do that if it's a good team, though. We're talking about a good upper echelon team. Because if Chicago is playing some team and they lost the first game, I'm not just going to bet Chicago the second game just because they lost the first game. They suck. They're no good. There's a pretty damn good chance they're going to lose the second game as well, straight up and against the spread. So Chicago would not be a team I would just rush to bet because they lost the first game. Boston is a different story. Boston's a good team. They're usually pretty good off a defeat. I trust Boston, a better team, an upper echelon Eastern Conference team to bounce back and beat the team that beat them in the first game just a couple days ago. Just like what we saw with Phoenix. They lost to Sacramento. What did they do 2 days later? They bounced back strong 1. I'm going to trust the good teams, okay? The upper echelon teams, good, well-coached teams to bounce back against the same team when they play them the second time if they lost the first game. I'm not going to ask the Chicago Bulls, or the New York Knicks or teams like that of the NBA to do that. So that's going to be my philosophy, I guess, when it comes to betting these games where it's the same 2 teams playing 2 games in a row. You may want to bet the good teams that lost the first game, but if it's a horrible team that lost the first game, chances are they're going to lose the second game to that same team as well because they're just not very good. So that's basically my handicapping and betting approach with those back-to-backs involving the same 2 teams. I think that theory is one that makes, at least to me, makes some sense.
Yeah, I don't really have a theory for betting them. I'm just gonna see how they kind of go the first couple of few, and then after that I'll make adjustments.
Yeah, this is unique. I mean, you rarely see, you're going to see this many, of course, same 2 teams playing each other 2 games in a row. But you're seeing that in college basketball. You're seeing it in NBA a lot. You're going to see it a lot in the NHL when hockey starts as well. So it's happening now in every sport.
I know. My bad. One thing I will look at is, a lot of these players are going to rest in the second game. So just expect that and try to get out ahead of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, ahead of the market. Yeah.
It's a totally different handicap in that regard with NBA with the condensed schedule. Teams are playing a lot of games in a shorter period of time. You're going to see a lot more load management. As we mentioned, same 2 teams playing each other. There you go. Lane in the chat. Wizards lost 2 straight. There you go. Or against Orlando over the weekend. And again, Wizards
it'll happen.
Not a great team. So again, sometimes you just don't match up and you're not very good. And if you lose the first game against that team, chances are you're going to lose the second one against that same team as well. We saw that with the Wizards against Orlando. It's the good teams that I trust to bounce back after losing the first game as opposed to the weaker ones. But there we go. That's going to, before we wrap up the show, again, quote unquote, best bet. I use that term loosely because it's a short card. We're not really strong on anything. I will throw out in terms of a best bet, and even with Denver's slow starts, Denver first quarter against Houston. I'm going to go with that for best bet. The coach is talking about it, slow starts. Again, this is a team that has habitually not played very well early in games. If there's one game where hopefully that happens, that they just get to a good start in the first quarter, something that they haven't been able to do in the first 2 games, it's tonight against what could be a little bit of a downtrodden, worn down Houston team. So hopefully Denver jumps out strong early, comes out fast. I'll go with Denver first quarter against Houston for my best bet for this short Monday card. Skee, how about you? A best bet for tonight?
I'll go to the Utah and OKC game. I like Rudy Gobert the best tonight. I think he dominates OKC over 12.5 rebounds.
All right, there we go. That's a good. I like that one a lot too. Rudy Gobert over 12.5 rebounds. I think you're going to see clear as day tonight why they missed Steven Adams here with this Oklahoma City team. Physicality, rebounding, toughness, defense in the paint. Horford and Muscala aren't that type of player.
Finesse.
Just
and they're on the Horford's on the downside.
Yeah, you're going to see that tonight. He's more of he's more of a away from the rim kind of big guy, and he'll step out and shoot, from mid range and long range. It's not that kind of guy that's going to muscle it up for rebounds on the glass with a guy like Rudy Gobert. So I like that prop quite a bit as well. Connor, what's your thoughts on best bet for tonight?
I'm gonna roll with the one I like the best today, and Skee didn't even with Gobert, so I'll go with Lakers Portland over 226. I think that gets over tonight. I think lots of points are scored.
There you go. Lakers Blazers, the nightcap, over 226 for Connor's best bet. And that's a wrap for this edition of the NBA Closing Time Show here on Pub Sports Radio. We'll be back on Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern, with another edition of the show. And then next week, we expand to 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, pretty much for the rest of the season. There'll be big cards each day starting next week. So looking forward to that. But great to be doing the NBA Closing Time Show this season on Pub Sports Radio with Skee and Connor. Looking forward to it. For Connor, Mac, Skee Prophet, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Monday night, everybody. Enjoy the games and good luck. We'll see you again on Wednesday right here, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, for another edition of the NBA